Okay, so what you saw from the video is we're just making use of this counter pattern throughout what we're looking at today. Okay, so that we can make sprites move to the left or to the right, whether it's up or down or moving in a diagonal. It's going to be pretty easy to apply. But you notice that we're applying this inside of the draw loop so that every time we go through the draw loop, something is changing. It's either increasing or decreasing. Okay, so we're going to use this Sprite counter pattern once again so that we can make things move like you see here at the top of the screen. We have a jet that's traveling up, and there's this little prop plane that travels to the right. Right now, the jet moves up, but our plane isn't moving anywhere. Okay, we need to find the code that makes the jet move up and add similar code to make the plane move to the right. So this is a good place, in my opinion, to go over to the show text. If I don't do the show text, like this is my preferred way to do it, where I come over here, take the code that I need, and I copy and I paste it and make the changes. If I don't want to do it that way, if I want to drag the blocks, look at how many blocks I have to drag over. I'd have to come over here and underneath these comments where it says move the plane over, okay, I have to add the purple for the variable. Then I need to add my sprite X or my sprite Y. In this case, it's the X direction. And then I have to use the sprite X again on the other side, but on the other side I need to add to it, so I need to bring that orange one over, and then the pink one over, and I need to change the name of the sprite to plane, and I change this one to plane, and I have it at the same value as the other one, so it's still going to be 3. So I'd have to drag all those over, okay? Or the other way of doing that is I can come over to show text and I take where we have the counter pattern for the jet and I add the same, I paste it over to where the plane is, and then I make the changes where I type in plane Y. Or I could just do it from the very beginning. I don't even have to do any sort of copy and paste. I can come over to this text mode and add to it and make the changes that are necessary. So don't be afraid to switch over into the text mode if you just need to make those small changes. Okay, sometimes it works out much quicker than trying to drag all these blocks over. If you're not comfortable, working in text mode, you can continue to work in block. There's really no issue working with either.
My plane is going up.
Your plane is going up?
Mm-hmm.
Are you adding or subtracting?
Oh, I'm subtracting.
And are you using the X or the Y? Remember that the X direction is left, right. Y direction is up, down. So if you want your plane moving from left to right, you need to use the X direction and make sure that we're adding. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, and as we're looking at the plane, if we want something that moves to the right, we need to do X, and we need to add. If we want it to move to the left, that's X, or we're subtracting. If we want it to move up, Y, subtracting. If we want it to move down, it's Y and adding. Okay, so that tells you what type of counter pattern that you need to use. Any other issues that people are seeing? Not yet? So if I reset and run, You see they move at the same pace. One is moving up and one is moving to the right. Da-da-da. Okay. So how could we make this fly move from right to left? What would you need to do?
Use the what? Oh,
So we use a counter pattern. What kind of counter pattern are we going to use? So I could drag all these different parts over and go, okay, well, I need the variable, which is the sprite. Is that going to be sprite X or sprite Y?
X.
Sprite X, because it's left to right or right to left. And then we need to have the math in there. Are we going to be adding or subtracting if it's moving right to left?
Okay.
And we have to subtract. So bringing all this over will be sprite X is equal to sprite X minus something. The sprite name is fly. So I need to put that instead of sprite. Now it says in our instructions, tip, you can make your sprites move faster by adding or subtracting larger numbers. They said the fly in their example moves twice as fast as the plane on the last level. You remember the value for the plane? That was 3. So this is twice as fast, it's going to change by 6. And if I run it, you see this little fly zip across the screen. And so all we needed to do was add this line. So I can pull the blocks over and this ends up being 4 different blocks from my toolbox. Or I can switch over to text mode and just type in fly.x equals fly.x, subtract, and the number. And make sure that we end it with a semicolon. What happens if I don't have the semicolon? Reset, run.
Ooh.
Ooh. It actually didn't have an issue this time, but it gives us this warning. Hey, you're missing a semicolon. It took into account that it should have been there. Doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it'll just give you an error and your code doesn't work and you don't know why. Okay? Sometimes when you get stuck and you don't know why your code isn't working, you got a couple options. Either you try to show it to someone else and have them take a look at it to see what you've missed, or you talk it out kind of like to yourself. Like you have your imaginary object, your imaginary friend here, and you go, hey, so, and then explain what each line of code does and what's supposed to be there. And sometimes then, when you are actually verbally explaining it, not just mentally going through, trying to provide that verbal explanation actually helps you understand what the problem is as well. Da-da-da. Okay? So how do you think we get diagonal movement? Right now, do we have diagonal movement?
No.
How would I get diagonal movement?
Maybe, like, you gotta do both.
Okay, so how would I do that?
You just do the same thing except make it the mouse X too.
Okay, so I could take this, and this is where I like the Control C, add a line, Control V, but I need to change it from the Y's to X's. And I can change it, well no, I can't change it back because once I change it back to text, it stays as Y. So I'm going to have to do it in here. So mouse X is equal to mouse X. Is the adding okay?
I don't think so.
You don't think so, or you think so?
I don't think so.
Well, let's look. Kind of looks like it matches to me. Remember, we're increasing in the X, we're increasing in the Y, and so because we're increasing both at the same time, and moves in a diagonal like this.
Yeah.
Is there a way that I could change this to move so that it changed more in the Y direction than it does in the X? What if I wanted it to go from this top corner to the middle here? How could I get it to literally come down in the middle?
You make one of the numbers bigger?
Yeah, so if I change the X less, if I just say X plus 1 instead of X plus 2, watch what happens. Okay. If I wanted to get it to move to here, and if I wanted to start from the top left corner and go off the middle of the screen on the right, how would I do that? How could I get it to move all the way across on the X direction, but only halfway on the Y? I would just have to switch these two numbers, 1 and 2. So for every 1 that's increased in the Y direction, it's increasing by 2 on the X. And now it ends up in the middle there. Kind of cool, huh?
Mm-hmm.
But I need to change it back to make sure that everything is moving the way that it needs to. So that's going to be 2 and 2, so that I get the correct grade. Da-da-da! Okay. So what do I need to look at to predict which animation is going to show up when we run this? What do I need to look at in my code? What's going to tell me which car is which? Do you think I should look at the starting positions, the rotation, or what's happening inside this draw function with the counter patterns?
The start.
You think the starting position would help? I think it could, but I don't think it's the easiest thing to track. But it would definitely tell me, because it tells me the X and the Y position that each of them start at. But I kind of feel like this is more thinking than's necessary. Like, I will agree it's possible. Okay? The same thing possibly with rotation. If we knew what the starting position was, you know, what the initial image looked like, you know, we could possibly use that. But again, both of those actually require more thinking. This counter pattern here actually gives us the quickest clue. If I have something that's plus in the X direction, if it's increasing in the X direction, which way is it moving? To the right. Plus in the Y direction, moves down. Minus in the X direction, moves left. Minus in the Y direction, moves up. All I have to do is look at plus or minus and which direction, X or Y, and that gives us like an immediate, like I don't even really have to think any further about that. So which way is the red car moving?
To the...
It says X plus.
To the right?
So it moves to the right. Does that match A? No.
I mean, no.
Is B moving to the right?
No.
No. We don't have the red car moving right. Here we have a red car moving right.
Yeah.
How about D? No. The only one where we have the red car moving right is C. Okay? And we can check for the other cars. Yellow moving down, blue moving left, green moving up. And that matches what we see here. Kind of weird, huh?
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna let you guys loose.
Oh, that's
You
not
have to
good.
do this A, B, C. Work on the assessment, which is making these fish move in the correct way. And there are some challenges to work on wiggling fish and bubbles. Once again, you don't have to worry about the free play. That's just once you get everything else done. And if you have any questions, obviously let me know and I'll try to point you in the right direction. But we're gonna cut you loose on this.
Oh, I'm about to die on battery. Does anybody have a charger?
I do.
Can I borrow it?
Okay.
Thank you.
Didn't quite last the day, huh?
It was at 0.5% most of the day.
0.5%
I don't
or
know where my
50%?
charger is.
Somewhere in your room, hopefully?
No, we checked all over the room.
Ugh.
I think I lost it at school.
That is problematic.
Yeah, very.
Now, I will say in B, they also teach you about something that's known as a watcher, which allows you an extra sort of debugging tool that you will see in the debug console. It's not something that appears on the screen, it's just information given to you. A lot of these things, it's really just adding or moving very few lines of code. And usually one or two. Remember how impossible those fish seemed last year? They kinda did.
Yeah. That's two fish maybe. Yes, orange fish. Wait, I need green fish. I'm colorblind apparently.
Sometimes just the
It
wrong thing
happens to
comes
the
out.
best of us.
Yep. It bothers me the number of times where like I literally am thinking like I think I'm thinking one thing in my head and like seemingly the exact opposite like comes out. You're like, how?
Mhm.
Like you're looking at something and you're like blue, 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 blue. You're thinking blue and somehow you say red and you're like, what? Where'd that come from?
That's
That-
happens to me very few times.
It happens to me way too often.
Oh no, I have to make the fish wiggle now?
Uh-huh. Wiggly fish.
And then I gotta make them have bubbles!
Uh-huh.
My brain.
Add detail, right? Is it really that hard? You have a counter pattern to make it move across the screen. And then you'll also add in the wiggle. Or add in the bubbles. Let me know if you need any help.
Mhm.
So now I gotta make a counter.
So it looks like for the spinning, I just need to set a Sprite rotation that is constantly counting. Is this positive or is this negative? That's one thing that you'll need to pay attention to. And it looks pretty slow. The counter pattern on the motorcycle or whatever that's going across the screen looks to be moving a little faster. It looks like we're moving in the negative Y but positive X direction. And then our rotation on the gears, each of those gears has to have its own counter pattern. Two are gonna be in one direction and the other's gonna be the other one. So is it two positive, one negative? Or is it two negative, one positive?
A coder's best friend. Copy and paste.
I am fond of copy and paste. The only problem is the copy and paste doesn't automatically like apply all the changes that are necessary too when I copy and paste.
Yeah,
If
that's
I
a
could
problem.
somehow think those into existence, that'd be great. So how's it going? I
Oh,
think you're in the right
oh.
spot. Except for, remember that if we look at previous versions, we had the purple, and inside the purple there was pink and let me see if this will help you. When you're trying to drag things over to create a counter pattern, one thing that's kind of driving people nuts is you have to drag like 4 different blocks, right? So we have a purple block. That's like the big thing. And inside that purple block, we're going to have a pink. That's going to equal, this one's going to be orange. And inside of that orange, you're going to have another pink. If that makes sense. Because what we have here is this is a Sprite. And this is a Sprite. Okay. And it's going to be Sprite dot something. You know, the thing that we're trying to change. Whether it's X or Y or rotation. Sprite dot rotation. And this one here is either going to be plus or minus. We don't know which one. It just depends on which way we need it to go. And we have in here some sort of number. Okay. So the pink allows us to find the Sprite and what we need to change about it, whether it's rotation or X or Y. The orange is going to provide our math box so we can add or subtract a particular number. And all of that is going to be in a purple one for your Sprite. Does that help? Hopefully, kind of, sort of. You can also look back to a previous example when they had a counter pattern, copy and paste that counter pattern and put it on your new screen and make the changes that are necessary. Like in this case, okay, we have a variable or a Sprite known as pan. So this is going to be, on this first one, something like pan dot rotation equals pan dot rotation, and we need to spin it to the right. Is that positive or is that negative? That's one thing that you need to determine. Is this positive? Is this negative? We don't know. And then a small value. And that will allow that pan to rotate. How's it going here? Okay. You get what I was talking about at the top?
How do you add this?
Oh. How do you add the orange? I usually have to add that in first. This is why I'm always switching over to X, just because it's easier, or copy and paste. So you add this first. And then you can come in and get back to that spread. Add it in with that. Oh yeah, you get it. I agree. When you're dragging blocks over, I get really annoyed with the fact that if I don't do it in the right order, then it doesn't want to work for me. Okay? So when I have to do these really embedded things, I like to copy and paste from like a similar example and then go over to my text mode and make the modifications to go, oh no, I want X instead of Y. No, the name is this instead of this. This way I don't have to drag the blocks in the right order and have to really spend time thinking about that. You can. I don't have a problem with that. Some people will find that easier. But your counter pattern is always following this purple variable, pink, Sprite name, and what we're trying to change, and this orange for the math, adding and subtracting, pink for the Sprite name with the property, plus or minus our particular number. So this is helpful, but it's still painful.
How would we make them wiggle?
How do you make what?
Hold on, I'm gonna read it.
Okay. Yeah. the increase. It's what? That's just because what they have is a GIF. Yeah, yours is good. Okay? It's, what you see isn't going to necessarily match exactly because usually what they show you as the example is just a GIF showing the movement. They don't show the exact thing, they show a clip that is on a repeatable loop. Okay, just like any other GIF that you're gonna see, you know, if you were looking at a meme. And you see that 3-second video and then it repeats and repeats and repeats. Now, could we actually have it do that? Yes, we could actually program it to match that, but that's not necessary.
Not right now.
Not right now, exactly.
Not yet.
So pay attention to those instructions on the motorcycle one. Because it teaches you about those watchers. And the watchers, you will see, it says look at the watcher for cycle X. So where do I see this watcher? Do I even know? I don't know. Oh, I don't really see anything showing. Ah, sorry, there it is.
Everybody got some new stuff.
I'm gonna pull this down to remind people where to look for this. Because I didn't remember exactly where it appears at first either. Okay, so on B, it tells you to look for the watcher for cycle X. And I've already told you that's something that shows up in the debug console area. And so I started looking at the debug console area, this main part. Okay, so when I run it, I was expecting to see something here, but that's not the case. It's on the right-hand side. So that bottom right-hand corner, you'll see what shows up is they've added a watcher that constantly shows what is the X value. So right now the X value is at more than 7,000. We're well off the screen. But if I run it from the beginning, it starts at 0 and works its way positive. But we notice that it doesn't continue on the Y. We see this constant increase in X, but we're not seeing anything for the Y. So we need to add a watcher for the Y. Okay? So you're gonna have to learn about these watchers. So I can get rid of it, I can show the watchers. If I want to add it, it says I need to look at what variable and which property. We want this to be for cycle Y. So that's going to be Sprite dot Y. And I guess I type it. Cycle dot Y. We're going to add. Oh, I see. Both of these, it says, hey, that's not available. That's not available because I added in an extra colon that was not necessary. And so now it will constantly show what's happening with the Y as well. So now if I reset and run, we'll see what's happening for each of those. So we need to find out what happens to the properties and why the motorcycle disappears. So why is it that the motorcycle isn't moving up? What do I need to do for a motorcycle to move up? The Y has to change from 400, we subtract, and if we subtract on the white instead of deposit,
No.
that changes everything. Ooh, I forgot about that, right? Okay, guys, we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.